Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is my review for Finding Carter, Season 1, Episode 8, Half-Baked, and wow, this episode was just absolutely amazing. By far the best episode of the season, really it was, and honestly, this episode really made me realize a couple things. This show is definitely better than Teen Wolf. Officially, it's better than Teen Wolf. It had an amazing twist in this episode. Love this episode. Thought it was definitely a very, very good episode. Pretty much loved everything about it. I love really everything about this episode. Thought it was absolutely amazing. Love the episode. Let's just get to it, because overall, I absolutely loved it. Thought it was fantastic. So basically, in the last episode, Carter, of course, officially said that she does not want to see Lori, so she kind of wants some closure with her. We see David driving Carter to meet Lori, basically trying to have some closure with her. And we see a flashback to Carter being lost in a playground and everything. I like that flashback. I thought it was cute. We see Lori running around looking for little Carter, and little Carter comes up and says she was feeding the ducks, and her mom said she can't ever lose her because she's the only thing in the world that matters to her. And I just thought that was a cute scene, in my opinion. So Carter's staring at her lap, and David asks if she's okay, and he says they are a little early. She asks what direction she'll come from, and then asks how upset she was when he told her, and then, asks how upset she was when he told Lori she wasn't going with her. And he says she can imagine. And she says Lori always told her that her biggest fear was losing her, and David says Lori had to know it was inevitable. And Carter asks if it would be weird for him, and he says not to worry about him. They wait outside the car, and Carter asks the time. She asks what they should do, and he says give it another 30 minutes, which they do. She doesn't think she's coming, and David said he wouldn't want to put her in more pain if he was in Lori's position. And Carter's crying and everything, because obviously she's really upset. This is her mother we're talking about. She's obviously very upset about this. So they agree to call it a day, and they leave. So why were they there in the first place? Lori never showed up. That doesn't make sense. Because, here's the thing. If Lori were, if Lori really were to come, then she would be there for Carter. We know this. She would be there for Carter. She cares about Carter. She would be there for Carter. That's just the logical thing here. She would be there for Carter, and she's not there. So why is she not there? We don't know. So then we see Elizabeth. She's knocking on Grant's door, and obviously Grant is pissed off at her because he just found out his mom and Kyle were having sex, obviously, and how we're having an affair. So she asks if he's hungry. He's playing video games, and he's in a pretty bad mood. She tells him he hates her and everything, and she tells David about this, and David says they knew this day was coming, and she said it's probably more than puberty angst. He thinks it's because of, like his hormones and things like that, and basically, he tells Elizabeth to relax, and Max is taking care of plants, and Taylor comes in and tells him her test went badly because there's no room in her brain anymore since he's taking up space, and he talks up the carbon cycle, and he says there should be less of him, more of it, and I thought it was just really a cute scene. I really do love Max and Taylor together. I've said this before. I think they're definitely, like, the couple in the show they really want us to root for, especially in this episode. They were just so cute together. They really were. Grant ends up coming in, and basically what ends up happening is David asks what's going, and basically, he comes in, and he's trying to speak to her, and he yells to get out. She goes and closes the door behind her. David asks what's going on. She recounts what Grant said, and, oh, wait, this was Elizabeth. Basically, there's a knock at the door, and, basically, it's Grant. Taylor goes to the door, lets her brother in, and he says he's not happy that she's there, but Max invites him in, and he flops down. Taylor asks why he's there, and he tells her Elizabeth is having, and of course, he tells her right away, and this was just really big. He says, Elizabeth's having an affair, and Taylor says he needs attention. She does not believe him at all. She thinks that he is lying about this. She thinks he wants attention and everything, but then Grant tells her very clearly that Elizabeth is having sex with Kyle, and she says it's not true. And of course, obviously, Taylor's a little bit upset about this because, she's very tight with Gabe. And they call Gabe over, and he confirms it. And basically, they then call Carter over, and he tells them it's actually been going on for 3 years. And, obviously they're upset because here's the thing. If he knew it was going on for 3 years, then why didn't he just ask his dad to stop it? They really want to know this. But he talks about how devastated Kyle would be when his mom was dying of cancer, and that he said that he finally came back to life when he started seeing Elizabeth, and he says his dad loves Elizabeth, and Carter says it has to end. Crash asks if she's going to tell Elizabeth, and Carter says that she and Taylor will tell Elizabeth she has to break up with Kyle. That's their plan. They are going to do it together. So they ask Max to watch Grant while they go confront Elizabeth, and he agrees and says he's his little brother too. And they end up leaving, and David and Elizabeth come in chatting from a jog, and they find them waiting there, and they tell her they know that she's sleeping with Kyle. Now, David is pretty much in the dark. He has no idea what's going on, and they tell her that Grant was in the closet and overheard, you know, what they were saying, and she and Kyle were talking, and she's obviously very, very devastated they had to find out this way. I mean, think about it. If you were in Elizabeth's position, and you were having, if I was in Elizabeth's position, I was having an affair behind, you know, like my wife's back, obviously I would be pissed, you know, obviously I would be very devastated that my children found out this way. They tell her that Gabe is known for 3 years, and she says it's over, and they tell her it's not over for Kyle because he keeps a photo of her by his bed, you know, because Grant said that, which I thought was, because Gabe said that, which I thought was definitely very interesting, definitely. I like seeing that Kyle actually really does like her. I'm wondering if they really want us to root for Elizabeth and Kyle, especially by the way this episode ended. And Elizabeth says she's very ashamed and embarrassed and sorry, and she says she will end it once and for all, and Carter says she has to tell David, like, right now. There is no choice. So Elizabeth says she just got her family back and doesn't want to destroy, and Carter tells her to tell him tonight, and Elizabeth agrees, and she says once it's done, they can all go back to normal. So, yeah, so she's planning on telling David and everything. And Carter then tells Crash how her mom reacted, and he says Elizabeth is responsible if she loses her family, not Carter. And, yeah, so Crash and Carter, I like them together. I mean, I don't like them as much as Max and Taylor, but I like them together. I thought it was a good scene there. And Elizabeth does finally tell David. He tells her that he knew, and she asks why he stayed, and he says he knew one day it would stop, and says he knows it meant nothing to her. You know, he finally tells her that he knew when she started this affair. He knew then. And I thought it was very good that he finally told her, because, you know, he had to tell her eventually. We know he had to tell her eventually, and, basically, he says he knows what she's like when she's in love, and she says he does, and she tells him it's over. So she puts her hand on his chest, and then he asks if this is what the girls want to talk about, and she tells him that Grant overheard her talking to Kyle, and he blows up and says and of course, obviously he's very upset. You know, he now says he's the object of pity to her and his kids. He says he has to do something. He's very angry and says he just got Carter back, and now she can't respect him. So, obviously very, very upset. She says she'll do anything, and he asks if she means it. And I was surprised that that he actually felt bad. You know, he wasn't mad at her. He was kind of mad at himself because, and I understand why he's mad at himself. He's mad at himself because basically he thinks that he's not good enough for Elizabeth, which is kind of true if you think about it. I mean, David's kind of a loser if you think about it. I mean, he has this book he's not writing on. I mean, it seems like the show wants us to really root for Elizabeth more than it does for David, definitely. And especially after this episode, I definitely root for Elizabeth more. So Carter, Taylor, and Grant, they come into the house and David greets them. They don't know what's going on. They have no idea what's going on. They don't know what's happened. They know that David and Elizabeth have talked. They just don't know what had happened. So Carter's asking how things are, and he says it's good. And David says they had an open and honest conversation. Things worked out. However, David tells the kids that she did move out, and he says they worked everything out and she's gone. And they're obviously very shocked because he said they worked everything out, which meant it was going to be all okay. So that doesn't seem like that's what's going on here. So after this happens, Elizabeth is gone, and basically because of this, Taylor and Carter are now in charge, which I thought was definitely very interesting. I like seeing this, definitely. I would have wanted to see this for maybe another episode, but I understand why they only did this for one episode. They had to, really. Basically, Taylor finds Carter reading a letter Elizabeth left for each of them, and they wonder what they can do, and Carter says she can't figure it out, and Taylor runs in and tells her that they overslept, they're late for school, because Elizabeth wasn't there to wake them up. She usually is there to wake them up, and they go into a panic. Everyone's late. You know, everyone is late at this point. There's no milk. There's running amok, and they all rush out the door, and Grant says he's going to be late and needs a note. They rush to drop him off, and Carter writes a note. The sisters agree to pick him up, and Carter says they'll figure it out together, and she promises to get him milk. You know, because there's a lot of shit going on, definitely, especially with Elizabeth not there. It's very chaotic, definitely. So he heads inside, and the sisters agree they need to ditch today. They decide to ditch because they're just too late. They're too late, and that's just what's going on there. So they head off to Max's place to hang out, and Crash is there too. And of course, they all sit there in silence. By the way, this is the first episode where there was no Bird or Ophi. I thought that was pretty good, actually. I liked that there was no Bird or Ophi. I mean, I really like them as characters, but they really did not need to be in this episode. Basically, everything's going on. They're having a nice talk and everything. And, of course, Crash then pulls out some weed. And Carter tells Crash that Taylor has never smoked. And Max tells him not to pressure Taylor into doing it. And Taylor says she wants to. And she says she doesn't have much, she doesn't have to make her mom proud anymore. Because, Taylor always wanted to be a great daughter to her mom. The perfect daughter. The daughter that doesn't do anything wrong. She's always done that all her life. So she's kind of being a little bit of a risk taker now, and I like that she's kind of doing this. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that she should be doing weed and everything, but her, taking a little risk, I like that she's doing this, definitely. Basically, Max tells him not to pressure Taylor into doing it. Taylor says she actually wants to, surprisingly, and she says she doesn't, basically, and we then see her playing with beads, and of course she's high, very funny when she was high, and she's doing like this British accent, very funny. Max goes to her, picks her up off the floor, she tells him he's beautiful, and then asks if and then she literally even asks, she's like, "Are you my boyfriend?" Like, it was so funny the way that was going. I thought that was just hilarious the way she said it. He lays her on the bed, she asks if he'll lay with her, he says no, and she says she wants him to. He says not while she's high, and he tells her to sleep, and yeah, so she goes to sleep, and that was just very sweet what he did. He knew that she was high and everything, so he did what he could do best, and I thought that was just very sweet the way that worked out. I just thought he was such a good boyfriend in that scene, definitely. So Crash tells Carter she has him wrapped around her little finger, and she asks if he'll promise, and she says it's something she and her mom used to say, the pinky swear thing that we saw in the beginning of the episode. Now we know why we saw that flashback, was because of that scene. And she tells him she misses her mom, and she says she'll see her again, and says he'll find her for Carter, because, he's still trying to find Lori, he's still trying to track down Lori, and then they kiss, and Grant sits alone, and then, Grant sits alone at the school. They did not pick him up, they forgot to, and he's trying to call his sisters, and he gives up, and he ends up calling Elizabeth to pick him up. So, Elizabeth is obviously very upset at Taylor and Carter, because, she trusts the fact that they would be responsible, and they weren't responsible enough, so, basically, that's what ends up happening there. So Elizabeth says that's not what David, basically, Carter asks if she can just come home, and Elizabeth says that's not what David wants, and Carter goes to talk to him, and Taylor is eating a fudgicle with relish. She's obviously, she's obviously still a little bit baked. She is baked. That's why this episode's called Half Baked, because she's baked, basically. She's getting the craving for, the munchies, definitely. So, Carter knocks on David's door. He doesn't answer. She goes into his office, and he's obviously not there. She then finds a bottle of booze, brings it out, and Elizabeth says he must be in his Hemingway mood and knows where he is. And Carter finds Carter finds her dad at the bar and says they need to talk. He says he decided to get a divorce, and he tells her that she should understand that he has to reinvent himself. He's obviously very upset. Now, I really like what Carter says to him here. He says Elizabeth married him when he was a promising writer, and he says he will never be the same person she thought he would be. Obviously, basically, Elizabeth's, leaving him has broke him, basically. It's broke him, and he just feels like a failure right now. And I really like what Carter says here, to encourage him to maybe patch things up here. She asks why that means divorce, and he says he let her down. And he says the only book anyone wants is the book he can't write. And she says finding Carter. And he says it's okay because he found Carter. And Carter basically tells Elizabeth he wants a divorce. And Elizabeth says she thought it was fixable. And Carter says it is fixable, but she's the one who can fix it. Basically, here's what she's going to do. If Elizabeth can come home, she's going to let David write the book. Because, of course, she told David, do not write this book about me. And she tells him, look, I will let you write this book if we can find, if we can find Mom and everything. I will let you write the book. And I thought that was definitely very well done. And I thought that was a good, proposition. And he basically just manipulated them into giving him permission to write the book. He's already been writing. And, yeah, so he basically just forced her into getting him to write the book, pretty much. He, in this episode, I really did not like David in this episode at all. They really want us to dislike him. So Carter goes back to see Elizabeth at the hotel. She asks how Carter talked him into it, but she will not tell her. She asks why Carter would do this for her, and she reads the letter that Elizabeth left her when she went, and it says that she owes all her honesty to Carter. And I thought that was just a sweet scene. And Elizabeth says she'll see her at home, and she says she has to go to work, and Carter asks about what happened to doing it all differently. And Elizabeth tells her to trust her. They come into the front door, and Grant hugs her and says he's glad that she's back, and he asks if she has milk, because of course, they ran out of milk, and she does, and he's happy about that. So Elizabeth also tells him that she took a leave of absence from work, so she decided to quit her job, and Elizabeth says she became a cop to find Carter, and now she has found her, so there's no reason for her to be a cop anymore. And Taylor says they no longer have a cop in a family, but it's only just a leave of absence. Also, this is kind of her having closure with Kyle. She doesn't have to see Kyle anymore. She doesn't have to worry about being with Kyle anymore. And honestly, her quitting her job was definitely the best thing she could have done. I think that was a great decision that Elizabeth made, and she definitely did the best thing she could have done. So, Elizabeth thanks David for letting her come home, and he says he didn't want to tear it apart because they just got the family back together, and they go to fix dinner. So Carter comes downstairs, and Elizabeth calls her. She shows her a baby book she made for her, and Carter asks where Grant's book is, and Elizabeth says she owes Grant a lot of things, and Elizabeth tells her she knows she saw Lori, and she thanks her for staying and choosing them. She says she almost talked to her, and she says she thought David made the call, and she says she made it but then froze. So she tells her David talked to her for just a moment, and he told her that Carter picked them and she needed to go away. So Carter asks, what about a meeting? And Elizabeth says there was nothing like that, because, she thought that David wanted to set up a meeting, but it turns out David didn't even set up a meeting. He had no plans to do this. It was just a short conversation. Because, we know what actually happened. We know that they just had a short conversation. And Carter blows up, says the lies never end. She says everything he told her was a lie, runs upstairs, and is obviously very upset at David. And that's how this episode ended. And honestly, I don't blame her for being upset at David. David lied to her about something that was very important to her. Obviously, he knew that this was important to her, and he still lied to her about it. It was just very deceitful, very wow. I did not think David would do something like that ever. And really, this episode made us hate David. I hate David's character now. I really do. I understand why he was upset with Elizabeth, definitely, but he basically forced Carter into getting him to write that book. He forced her into it. He forced her. He said, oh, nothing's going to happen for me. And then the last time when she's like, I'll let you write the book. Oh, great, everything's happy again. He just did that for her to, he just basically said that to her just so she would let him write the book. That's why he said that. We know that. And I don't trust David. Now, I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen here. It's definitely going to be very interesting to see what happens, because definitely, of course, she does not trust David right now. David is not on her good side at all. And, again, I really don't blame Carter for not trusting David. I really don't blame her. Now, as far as Taylor goes, I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen with Taylor. I like that she has this new kind of rebellious attitude. Even though she has her mom back, it looks like next week she's going to try to have sex with Max. So, I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Also, David. What is going to happen with David? Obviously, they're going to have some sort of conversation. Definitely Elizabeth and David. They're not going to be on good terms again. And now I feel like everyone's going to be against David, like everyone's against Elizabeth in this episode. And we kind of are realizing that Elizabeth really is a great parent. I understand why Elizabeth did what she did. Because her husband's basically a two-faced liar, and she can't even realize that. And I really like that we got that reveal in this episode. Thought that was definitely very well done. But overall, guys, I love this episode. Thought this was by far the best episode of the season. Absolutely loved it. So many great things about this episode. I mean, just really, really great stuff in this episode. A lot of great stuff. Really looking forward to seeing if Carter does actually find her mom, because she really just wants to tell her mom. She really wants that closure with her mom, and I can definitely understand why she wants that closure with her mom. She deserves that closure with her mom, definitely. I want her to have that closure with her mom. But definitely Carter really does want that closure with her mom, and I really hope she gets it, because she really does deserve it, in my opinion. I think she does. So yeah, basically that's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Also, apparently Carter might be going to jail next week, because we saw that in the promo. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens next week. But that's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think of this episode. Do you guys think David did the right thing in not telling Carter? Obviously, Carter's pissed, so that's obviously not a good thing now. But I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for another movie review. So I'll actually see you guys for that. I will be doing a movie review, so I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye. One last thing, guys, I did forget to say about this episode. One of the other things I forgot to say is that, really, the thing with David writing that book about Carter, we know he's going to write it. He already told her he was going to write it. He already planned on writing it. So, that really shows his opinion. This episode really changed my opinion of David. It really did. Elizabeth and Kyle, too, but that was for the better. Like, I really like the two of them together. I'm wondering if the show really wants us to root for Elizabeth and Kyle together. I'm wondering if they're going to try to get them together now, because if Elizabeth leaves David, which I think she's going to, and now it makes sense why her mother's telling her, to leave David and go to Kyle, because her mother really doesn't like, because Elizabeth's, grandmother, Carter and Taylor's grandmother doesn't really like David. It makes sense now, because David is pretty much a liar, and he's already planned this stuff out. So it's going to be interesting to definitely see what happens there. But I really want to talk about that, because I thought it was definitely very interesting as well. So yeah, here, but the thing is, like with David, you really can't trust him because, and if you remember in episode 1, Carter had stated to him, "Don't write that book about me," and he did it anyway. So it's no surprise that that he did this. Definitely, it's no surprise at all that he did this. But I'm very interested in seeing what Carter's going to try to do to find Lori, because obviously she wants to have that closure with Lori. So I'm wondering if she's going to get it. But yeah, that's basically it for my review of this episode. Let me know what you guys thought of it, and I'll see you guys in my next video, as I said, which will be for another movie review. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.